Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the Cobra in this video, specifically back to the transmission rebuild. Last video on the transmission, I was able to come to the conclusion that I can reuse the case, and I was just getting ready to order some parts. I went ahead, made the decision on what parts to get. I did go with a new gear set. I went with the 400 horse version of the gears from AMP. They had a whole package that came with, the gear set, the retainer, reinforced retainer, like the billet retainer for the counter shaft, as well as some other little bits and pieces. So it seemed like the best buy for what my purposes were. So that being said, I'm going to get the camera turned around and get to work on the rebuilding of this transmission. All right, so first thing I want to address is the counter shaft. As far as this goes, it's being replaced. I apologize, landscapers just pulled up and started doing some work across the street, so hopefully you can hear me over their weed whacker. But anyway, counter shaft that came, or that was in the vehicle, is no longer going to be used. This is going to be replaced with a new one with a new gear set. As you can see, the bearing was damaged when I removed it. That was because I didn't put a block of wood under it when I was pressing the other bearing off, so it collapsed and it, dented this up and two of the rollers fell out. If you're going to be reusing your bearings, which I don't see why you would if you got this far into the transmission, be careful to put something under it when you're pressing the other bearing off. But that being said, I don't have to worry about it. Sometimes, or to remove this, they're normally not loose enough where you can do it by hand. Your best bet is going to be to pry off the cage, and then you can go ahead and use a bearing puller with a press and pop this bearing off. That is if you're reusing your counter shaft. Being that I'm not, I'm leaving it alone, putting it off to the side. Nothing I need to do with this part because I will be using a new one. And real quick, same drill with the input shaft. If you are going to be reusing your input shaft and you want to replace the bearing, it's going to be similar. You're going to need to most likely pop the cage off of this and then go ahead and use a puller tool to catch the underlip of the actual main race portion the lower portion that actually is pressed onto the input shaft, and then pull it off that way because it is a press fit. Again, I'm going to have a new input shaft with my new gear set, so don't need to worry about anything with this because I will have a new fourth gear. So I'm just going to put this off to the side. All right, well, I'm going to either call myself a lucky guy or a very unlucky guy, depends on how you want to look at it. I had moved this and put this here because it was the next thing I was going to be filming after that last bit, and then I went inside to grab a quick bite to eat and heard a loud crash. You see this mark here? This is that gear, the impression it made as gravity took its course and this decided to roll itself off of my workbench and hit the ground. Right here we can see it took a chunk out of the concrete. Based on the weight of this, it pretty much nosedived. I came out, found it on the ground, and immediately my heart sank thinking that, oh no, I have just destroyed or damaged the output shaft. I'm very lucky. Thankfully, in looking at the tip of the shaft, because this is the thing I'm really concerned about, because everything else is pretty much going to be replaced. All the gears, there's really no concern there, and nothing else hit the ground. It all looks fine. It just looks like the tip hit here. Thankfully, the bearing or the roller race portion is still mint. I did put the fourth gear on and spun it around. There's nothing catching. There's a couple little spots just on the very edge up here, which this does not touch anything, that I can feel a little bit of a tight spot or a rough spot. You might see it as I spin it, but it's really hard to notice. So I'll just take a really fine file and just clean that up ever so slightly. But the actual portion that matters, where those rollers roll, it's fine. There was no issues whatsoever. So if you have this on your bench, make sure that you have something to stop it from rolling like it is currently doing there. So I'm going to be taking my input shaft that I just talked about and putting it here for now so this thing no longer rolls off of my bench. So mental note, be careful. All right, so starting to disassemble the output shaft. First thing you do, get the speedo gear off, and that's pretty easy. You just have this little retainer clip here, push down on it, it should slide off, and then you can take the clip out. And once that's done, I need to grab some snap ring pliers and then remove this snap ring here that is holding on the 5th gear. So I'm gonna get those two things removed real quick, and then I'll be right back. All right, and there you can see Speedo's gear is off, and then here's the clip. Like you said, you've got this little notch that goes into a hole right there. And all you need to do is push down on this end to get that little clip tab to clear the gear, and then a little whap with a rubber mallet, and it came right off. And then I removed the snap ring, which goes in here. This isn't like your tradition, or like a lot of the ones where you have a hole in them and then you just grab the two. This, you just kind of need to fight with it. Get the pliers under there, and then I just normally use like a flat blade screwdriver or a pry bar once I get it loose enough to just try and start walking it this way, and then it'll clear the groove and you should be able to just walk it the rest of the way off of the shaft. So next on the list, I want to see if I can get these gears off without having to use a press. Sometimes they come off, sometimes they don't. What I'm gonna do is hold the first gear here and then hit the end of the input or the output shaft with a rubber mallet, see if anything moves. If it moves, that's a great sign. I should be able to start removing things without needing a press. If not, then it is gonna be time to move over to the press. All right, so quick update, few blows from the dead blow and it did move, but then it stopped moving. So you don't wanna hit a hammer on this too hard. Don't do it with a metal hammer or anything like that. I was using the rubber end of a dead blow hammer. And like I said, it moved a little bit. There's a little play in here and whatnot, but not anymore. It has stopped. So I'm not gonna mess around with that anymore. It'll just end up having to get pressed off. But before I do that safely, I need to take everything off of this end. So that way I have as much room on the first gear to get on the plates on the press. So what I'm gonna do is get this spun around and start disassembling the other side. All right, spun around, and the synchro ring and bearing that were on this face have already come out. There's also a spacer here that I'm gonna put there, and that gets us to the hub. I also went ahead and pulled out the outer of the synchro mechanism. This will just pop off. You know, you'll feel it hit the keys, but it'll, you know, just pull it over the detent, comes right off. So this is the face towards the rear of the transmission. The face that has the lip like this is towards the front of the transmission. So next I'm gonna grab the dead blow again and see if I can start popping loose anything on the front end, because these should hopefully come off with just, you know, a couple hits of the hammer. All right, well, similar to the other side, the hammer or the rubber mallet did not do the job, so I ended up having to break out the puller. So this is now off. I had to pull. What you want to do is get in behind here. Don't pull from behind the gears here because you're going to chip a tooth. Pull from back here. Clamped it on. You know, it's just a two-jaw puller. Worked fine. Pulled everything loose. So we've got this hub here, which this is the front face. It went on this direction. So I'm going to put that inside of the synchro housing, and then you have the other side synchro. Put that in there, and then we can pull off the gear and the needle bearing that goes inside the gear. This is 3rd gear, so I'm going to just stack that on the stack right there, just how it came off, and just try and keep things in order in that respect. And one thing I did forget to mention is with the caged needle bearings, depending on what you're planning on doing with your vehicle, if a lot of the rebuild kits do not include these anymore for this transmission, and they're kind of hard to find, so be careful removing it if you're planning on reusing it. Don't crush it, don't damage it, you know, if you do have to save it, because again, they're a little bit harder to find. I did buy new ones for mine, so I'm not as worried about it, but it is something to think about. Also, I'm going to start pulling off 2nd gear. For that, there is a little spacer here that you do not want to lose. So you take off the spacer, and then there's a snap ring, and then you should be able to take off 2nd gear. All right, so here's that spacer. Here is the snap ring, and keep in mind that this is beveled a certain direction. You want the more open side towards the gear. It just makes it easier to get the pliers on it. So there's that. Then you are going to have a spacer up against the gear, and then you will have 2nd gear. So that is off. I'm going to put that in a stack there. And then you also will have, obviously, the caged bearing. Again, be careful with this if you are reusing it. All right, so the last bit that we're going to remove is the 1-2 slider assembly with these synchros. So the way we have to do that is first there is a little spacer here that needs to come off, which is pretty straightforward, just slides off. Put that at the bottom of the pile. Next, there is like a spiral lock ring, and what you're gonna have to do is find the end of it, whichever side you're on. It looks like it's right about here. And then get a very thin flat blade screwdriver under there, and then you just slowly work it up and walk it out. Be careful, it is very sharp, thin steel, so it will cut you. But yeah, just kind of pull it out, walk it around, get the whole thing out, and then just it'll all slide off. Once that's off, we can go ahead and start removing the synchro assembly for second gear. And here you can see the spiral lock. What I did is I held this upright so it was on the end so the shaft wouldn't spin as I was trying to work that out. And then once I got, the tip of this screwdriver under the lip of it, I just kind of started walking it out. And then with just a rag kind of under or over my finger so I wouldn't cut myself, I just kind of get my finger under there and just kept working it all the way around, and it eventually popped out of the groove. So now you can just grab hold of it and walk it off the end like so. And that is the spiral lock right there. Put that on that stack. Next up is going to be the synchros, and then there's also a thrust washer. So we're going to take the thrust washer. Then we have the second gear synchro parts like so. All right, so I stacked the thrust washer and then all the synchro pieces onto the second gear just to kind of take a look at it and check it for operation, because this did have the traditional, or well, not traditional, but notorious T5 first shift into second grind. And I was just trying to see if I could see anything that was wrong with this. After it warmed up, it seemed to be okay. And a lot of times, if you have worn synchros, you'll start to see this portion wear down where it's actually contacting here, just based on, inside of here, just based on it being worn down and the tolerance is shrinking because there's the fiber discs that are on the synchro. This mesh here, or this material just wears away. But yeah, these actually don't look to be too bad. But kind of give you an idea, again, how the synchros work is when there's no pressure applied to this, it spins free, or it would actually be the gear spinning freely because this is keyed to the shaft here. So this is actually kind of locked into the shaft. The gear would be spinning freely, but as soon as there's pressure on this, it locks up and the gear and grabs the gear. So first, this will be engaged with those teeth, and then the gear teeth will be engaged. But as you can see, the teeth on my second gear are pretty chewed up. So, I mean, I'm definitely replacing this, obviously, because I'm going to do a different gear set. But you can see the synchro teeth versus the gear teeth on my second gear. So just kind of wanted to show you that, the synchro itself, it's a 3-piece synchro. Here's your outer. Here's your inner that's got this material on it, as you can see. And then you've got, that was your middle, and then you've got your inner part. And this is what's keyed to the shaft here. So just kind of give you an idea on how that works. All right, so the last thing we're going to do on this side of the first gear is actually just pull off the slider, which I already loosened that up. All you do is pull it, and it's going to pop loose of the 3 keys. You'll see the keyway here, here, and here. Those 3 keys will pop out. They look like this. One of the springs popped out. The other thing is there is a check ball that is in here as well. Here's the hole. There will be a spring and a ball that will come out of that, so just be mindful of that. And then, yeah, you will have your slider. So this I do need to look at. I'm trying to get an idea of it in better light to see condition-wise if this needs to be replaced or can be reused. So I'm going to kind of take a closer look at it real quick, and then I'll make a decision. These are, in theory, from the manufacturer matched to the center. You never take this center off. This is pretty much permanently affixed to the output shaft. Don't try and remove it. You can get new ones of these, and they're basically just like a slightly oversized, so it will fit on here. But I'm going to double check this, look at the teeth, under a microscope, or just kind of magnify them a little bit with a magnifying glass just to make sure everything looks good, because I'm obviously looking at it through a phone right now. And then I'll make a decision if I'm going to replace this or not, just based on my second gear issues. All right, so it is time to remove the last bit, and as you can see, I'm already set up on the press. You are okay to just put a couple blocks under first gear. This isn't that tightly pressed on, but it is enough where just trying to hammer it, if you watched me earlier in this video, it just didn't loosen it up. Some will come off with just a hammer. This one was not enough. So I'm gonna go ahead, apply a little bit of pressure, pop off the small fifth gear, and once that's off, everything else should come off of the shaft without an issue. So I'm gonna go ahead, grab the handle for the press and get this done. All right, back at the workbench, and yeah, that took very little pressure at all. I mean, every crank, it moved just fine. There was no issues. So in order, you're gonna remove your fifth gear. You've got your rear bearing for the output shaft, first gear, and then the first gear caged bearing. Those are going to come off separately. What I'm going to do is get these things slid off the shaft, because I'm only working one-handed right now. Let me get those removed from the shaft, and then we'll walk through the last few bits. All right, now you can see there's the reverse gear, the rear bearing, and then first gear with the cage. So next to come off is going to be the first gear cage has an actual sleeve, and this is going to be keyed to the shaft via a ball bearing, which is probably hiding somewhere in this stack. There it is. Okay, so on this one it's a pin. Some vehicles it's a ball bearing. I got a pin on mine. So anyway, so you're going to take this off, and you will see that there's a spot that it's keyed to that so it doesn't spin on the shaft. So that is your inner race for the cage bearing here. And then you are going to have the first gear synchros. So similar to the second gear synchro, it is a three-piece design. That will slide off. And then once you remove that, that is the end of disassembly of the output shaft, because again, you are not taking this off. This is hard press, tightly fit, accurately done by the factory, and it is not designed to come off of the shaft. So I'm gonna go ahead and slide the rest of these items off, and I'll be right back. All right, and here's what I was talking about. Here's the little notch in that race that will ride on either a ball or a pin, depending on the year of your transmission. And then this will just sit inside the cage bearing right there. And then here is the three-piece first gear synchro as well. Everything looks actually fairly decent on it. It's not too worn down, and this isn't going to wear as much as a second gear one would, because it's always engaged at a standstill. But yeah, everything looks fine there. So that is the first gear synchro assembly. That would go actually this way on the shaft. And then the only thing that's left is one of the green spring, like that one for this side of the keys, is still in there, so I just need to pop that out. But other than that, that is job done as far as disassembling the output shaft. Pretty straightforward for the most part. It's not too crazy if you have a few tools and a little know-how. But there you go, output shaft torn down. All right, well, I did take out that last spring, and yeah, that is where I am going to end this video, I think. Good stopping point. Next video, I will start up with doing the reassembly of all the parts, because hopefully at that point in time, I will have everything that I have ordered. I did make a decision. I am going to order a new 1-2 slider as well. It doesn't make sense to have this one, which does have some slight wear on the teeth on the inside, to match that up to a brand new second gear. I took the original second gear there, laid it in there, and I could just see where it was worn from the two sides trying to engage. So that is something I am going to need to order as well. Everything else is already on order, but I will need to find one of those and get that ordered. But yeah, that being said, if you want to follow along, see how the reassembly goes, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. I do review them and I will reply. I do have a second channel related to firearms. If that's something that interests you, check it out. There is a link in the description to this video. Also have a Rumble channel as well, link in the video description for that, same as my YouTube or my other YouTube channel. I do have a few merch items for sale. You may see them below the video. There is also a link for those in the description to this video. That being said, thank you very much for watching and have a great day.